terms of the study of composition, logic can be defined as the science of examining arguments in order to decide whether or not they are valid. Through this video, you will learn the basics of logic so that you can apply them to your own writing and to the analysis of outside sources. When using deduction, a writer makes a conclusion about a specific instance based on a series of generalizations. An example would be to say that all feminists believe that men and women should have equal rights, and Ashley Judd is a feminist, so it follows that Ashley Judd must believe men and women should have equal rights. Since most of your writing will involve using inductive reasoning rather than deductive reasoning, we will move on to induction. When using induction, a writer uses specific evidence to support the statement of a generalization. For example, the argument, my composition class requires a lot of writing, and my friend's composition class also requires a lot of writing. Therefore, all composition classes must require a lot of writing, would be an example of inductive reasoning. Notice, though, that just because this argument is logically sound, the conclusion that all composition classes must require a lot of writing is not necessarily true. It is the strength, validity, and quantity of the examples you use to prove your argument that will help determine its truth. Logical fallacies are types of arguments that are flawed, making them less convincing or even completely untrue. Part of being a good reader and writer is being able to evaluate whether or not an argument is sound, so it is important to have an understanding of the types of fallacies that you might encounter. I'll list a few of the more important ones along with a few examples. The first one is called hasty generalization, which is forming a conclusion based on an inadequate number of examples. An example would be, the food at Denny's makes me sick, and it makes my brother sick too, so eating at Denny's must always make people sick. While it might be true that everyone gets sick every time they eat at a Denny's, the experiences of two people are not enough to conclusively prove that that statement is true. The post hoc fallacy is making the assumption that one event caused another just because it came first. For example, the statement, after skateboarders started frequenting the local park, graffiti started popping up on park benches. Therefore, the skateboarders must be creating the graffiti, would be post hoc. Just because the graffiti showed up right after the skateboarders began to use the park does not mean that the skateboarders were the ones who created the graffiti. There would need to be more conclusive evidence to prove that point. In the appeal to authority fallacy, a writer cites a well-known or prestigious individual when that individual does not really have expertise on the topic at hand. An example would be, eating at McDonald's is bad for you. Dr. Phil says so, so it must be true. Dr. Phil, whatever his other accomplishments may be, is not a nutritionist, nor has he to my knowledge done any studies on fast food, so he is not a credible source to cite in this argument. If a person is claiming that a statement is true because the majority of people believe it to be so, they are committing the ad populum fallacy. An example would be, video games are making our children more violent. 7 out of 10 people believe that they are, so it must be true. What the majority of people believe is not a valid indicator of what is actually true. Using these key concepts, you can improve your papers through sound logic.